When people think of America, wealth and opportunity often come to mind. But the reality is millions of Americans are still living in poverty right here in the United States. In this video, we're counting down the top 10 poorest states in America in 2025 places where incomes are low, poverty rates are high, and the future looks uncertain. Some of the names on this list might just surprise you. If you find this content helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. 10. Oklahoma, where poverty just won't let go. Welcome to Oklahoma, the 10th poorest state in America. It's a place where the plains stretch endlessly, but your wallet might be thinner than a napkin. Here, nearly 15.7% of the population lives below the poverty line, and the average household income hovers around $55,000 a year, quite a bit lower than the national average. But hey, if you're poor in Oklahoma, at least you've got the wind. Lots of it. The struggle here isn't just about money. Weak education, limited health care, and an economy heavily tied to oil and gas make it tough for people to move up. When oil prices go up, it's a party. But when they drop, well, it's game over. Oklahoma also ranks among the states with the highest incarceration rates. So if you can't afford to live, you might just end up getting food and shelter on the state's dime. Maybe that's the real safety net plan. In some rural parts of Oklahoma, the poverty is so visible, you'd think you're on the outskirts of a developing country, not in the United States. Add in racial and income inequality, and it's no wonder many people feel stuck in a cycle they just can't break. Google, "Why is Oklahoma so poor?" and the top answer is, because it is. Brutally honest. And maybe that's how people here see it too. They get by on faith, hope, and government assistance. 9. Tennessee. Great music. Tough living. Welcome to Tennessee, the heart of country music where the guitars strum late into the night, mostly to drown out the sound of growling stomachs. Here, over 16.5% of the population lives below the poverty line, and the average household brings in about $54,000 a year. Sounds decent until you realize healthcare and housing costs are rising faster than Taylor Swift's release schedule. Sure, Nashville might be the music capital of the world, but for folks in the rural eastern and western parts of the state, music doesn't put food on the table. Many work overnight shifts in warehouses or rely on food stamps just to get by. Meanwhile, politicians keep preaching faith and self-reliance as if belief alone can pay the electric bill. High dropout rates, limited job opportunities, and below-average wages keep Tennessee's working class spinning in a cycle of poverty. And don't even get started on healthcare inequality. Some folks can't even afford the bus ride to the nearest clinic, let alone the doctor's bill. One so-called bright side, Tennessee doesn't have a state income tax. Sounds great, unless you don't have income to tax in the first place. Poverty here isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, constant, and lingers like a sad song that just won't end. Search, "Why is Tennessee so poor?" on Google, and you'll see reasons like underfunded education, reliance on old-school industries, and a government that regularly slashes social programs. In other words, if you're poor here, the state expects you to figure it out on your own. 8. South Carolina. Southern poverty. The traditional way. Welcome to South Carolina, land of sunshine, sandy beaches, and generational poverty. Here, 16.9% of residents live below the poverty line, and the average household income is around $53,000 a year, which means even if you work full-time all year, you still might not be able to afford a ticket to Disney World. In South Carolina, people don't say "I'm poor." They say "I'm preserving cultural heritage." And that heritage includes a lack of job opportunities, failing public education, and infrastructure that feels like it's stuck in 1955. 90% of working adults live paycheck to paycheck, and losing a single job, whether it's bus driving or waiting tables, can send an entire family into financial free fall. Income inequality here is growing faster than the sweat stains on a Charleston summer afternoon. South Carolina used to be an agricultural powerhouse, and now not much has changed except cotton and tobacco no longer send your kids to college. Public schools, especially in rural areas, look more like storage units missing everything from Wi-Fi to qualified teachers. And if you're thinking, well, surely the government is trying to fix this, think again. They're slashing benefits, refusing to expand Medicaid, and investing heavily in prayer. Because here, poverty is met with faith, not facts. In South Carolina, the past never really died, it just got poorer. 7. Kentucky, where time moves slow and the economy moves backward. Welcome to Kentucky, land of mountains, bourbon, and sustainable poverty. Here, a full 20% of residents live below the poverty line, and the average household income is just around $52,000 a year, about what you'd spend in a single month living modestly in New York City. Despite the peaceful scenery of pine forests and bluegrass music, Kentucky hides a limping economy like a pickup truck missing a rear wheel rolling through the Appalachians. People are working and unemployment is average, but most jobs are low-wage, lack benefits, and come with the phrase, "tips make up most of your income." In some rural counties, selling plasma is the fastest-growing industry. You can earn $50 a week, assuming your blood's still clean. But with the amount of meth and Mountain Dew flowing through some veins here, that's not always a sure bet. Kentucky is also a poster child for educational stagnation. In many mountain towns, schools don't have enough math teachers, and the internet is about as reliable as a radio signal from 1963. Ask, why don't you just study online, and they'll reply, what's online? And don't forget, this is one of the states hardest hit by the opioid crisis. Here, painkillers aren't just for injuries. They're for numbing the ache of a future that feels like it's going nowhere. In short, Kentucky is where the modern world drove by, waved politely, and kept going. It's stuck between the 21st century and 1972, poor, addicted, and waiting for a miracle. 6. Alabama, where the American dream clocked out in 1955. Welcome to Alabama, where the poverty rate hits 18.1%, and the median household income hovers around $51,000 a year. Though honestly, it feels more like $25,000, with prices climbing like Bitcoin back in 2021. Here, 1 in 5 residents lives below the poverty line, and in some rural areas the landscape looks rougher than a documentary about sub-Saharan Africa. That's not an exaggeration. The United Nations once came to investigate poverty in America, and Alabama was their first stop. Yes, the same UN that usually goes to places like Haiti, Sudan, or Yemen, decided to drop in on Alabama. That says a lot. So why is Alabama so poor? Some blame unregulated capitalism. Others say it's laziness. But the truth lies somewhere in between, in a place where the education system feels like it's been unplugged for years, and job opportunities are about as rare as 5G signals in the countryside. Infrastructure here. Think Civil War vibes. Pothole-riddled roads, understaffed schools, and rural hospitals shutting down left and right. Break your leg in Greene County. You might have to drive 80 miles to the nearest ER if your gas tank isn't on E. Perhaps the saddest part is the quiet acceptance of poverty as just the way it is. A lot of folks have stopped fighting it. You ask why, they just shrug. It is what it is. Hope has been swapped for faith. Pray on it. God will provide. But lately it feels like God's busy somewhere else. 5. Arkansas. Forests, wide rivers. Deep, wallets. Empty. Next up, Arkansas, known as the natural state for its stunning landscapes. But when it comes to the economy, you might as well call it the financially strained state. Here, about 16% of the population lives in poverty, and the median household income sits around $49,000 a year, well below the national average. At that level, paying bills, raising kids, and saving anything is like trying to juggle with one hand tied behind your back. Sure, the cost of living in Arkansas is lower than in many other states, so each dollar does stretch a bit further. But the harsh truth remains: most families are living one unexpected emergency, a car repair and illness, a layoff away from financial crisis. Believe it or not, Arkansas used to be even poorer. Back in the 1940s, nearly half the population lived in poverty. So yes, there's been progress, but slow, painful, inch-by-inch progress. Like many southern states, Arkansas struggles with underfunded education, limited healthcare access, and a labor market full of low-wage, no-benefit jobs. In many rural areas, it feels like time and investment just forgot to stop by. The people of Arkansas can proudly point to their natural beauty, but when it comes to economic opportunity, let's just say Lady Luck lost their address a long time ago. 4. West Virginia. Majestic views. Tiny wallets. Continuing our tour of America's less affluent states, we land in West Virginia, a place of breathtaking mountains, heartwarming country music, and one of the highest poverty rates in the country. Here, 18% of the population lives below the poverty line, and the median household income is just $47,000 a year. Yep, nearly 1 in 5 West Virginians struggles just to get by, and that number hasn't budged much in years. But not everything's bleak. Unemployment isn't sky-high, a rare bright spot in an otherwise gloomy economy. And because the cost of living here is significantly lower than in many other states, some families manage to make it work even on modest incomes. So what's the real problem people are leaving? Fast. Studies show that for every 10 people who move out, only 4 move in. What's left are aging, shrinking communities with fewer young people and even fewer reasons to stick around. Even more sobering, West Virginia is the only state in America where deaths outnumber births. Let that sink in. More people are dying than being born. Fewer babies, more funerals. It's a recipe for population decline, economic stagnation, and eventually being forgotten. Once a bustling coal powerhouse, West Virginia now feels like a mountain asleep in its own history. And unless there are bold changes in education, healthcare, and job creation, that slow slide backward may just keep on going. 3. New Mexico. Land of enchantment and poverty. Welcome to New Mexico, where desert beauty meets empty wallets. Ranked as the 3rd poorest state in America, the numbers here tell a tough story, and once you see them, it's hard to look away. Roughly 20% of the population lives below the poverty line, and the median household income is around $46,000 a year. That's a full 10 grand below the national average. Even more alarming, 1 in 3 kids here is growing up in poverty. If you're looking for the worst place in the U.S. to raise a child, this might be it. And it gets deeper. New Mexico is one of the most federally dependent states in the country. That means it doesn't bring in enough state income tax to support its schools, roads, health care, or basic social services. Without help from Washington, New Mexico would basically shut down. Remember our old friend Louisiana, it tops the list in federal aid, and New Mexico isn't far behind. In both states, the economy leans more on government funding than actual productivity. So what's going wrong? Experts point to underfunded education, low investment, and widening inequality as the key culprits. And in New Mexico, these cycles don't just repeat, they entrench. 2. Louisiana. Great at parties. Broke in the bank. Welcome to Louisiana, where jazz pours out of every corner of New Orleans, and folks throw some of the best parties in the country, even if they can't always afford a beer. Here, over 19% of residents live below the poverty line, and the median household income is just $40,000 a year. Translation: most people are barely getting by, forget about climbing any kind of economic ladder. Still, Louisiana does top a few national rankings, just not the good ones. It's number 1 in gender income inequality, top 3 in food insecurity, and also bottom 3 in education scores. It's the perfect storm if you're trying to simulate life in a developing economy without leaving the US. So no tech companies aren't exactly racing to open offices here. You can't build a modern economy with a workforce that's been left behind. But what really sets Louisiana apart is the mindset, a quiet resignation. People here seem used to being poor. Just pray about it, they say. It is what it is. There's no real sense of urgency to change anything. And maybe when acceptance becomes culture, progress becomes a luxury. 1. Mississippi, the undisputed king of American poverty. We've reached the top, or rather the very bottom. Welcome to Mississippi, the poorest state in America. If poverty were an Olympic sport, Mississippi would have been winning gold for years. Here, 19.4% of the population lives below the poverty line. That's nearly 1 in 5 people. And in some rural areas it's much worse. In Mississippi, the odds that you or your neighbor are financially struggling are sky high. The average household income somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 a year, with many counties doing even worse. For context, that's on par with countries like Namibia. Yes, we're talking sub-Saharan Africa levels of income in the United States. Unemployment sits around 6.85% higher than the national average. And until recently, about 1 in 4 adults didn't even have a high school diploma. Let's be honest, it's hard to land a decent job when your resume doesn't go past "can operate a tractor." Google "why is Mississippi so poor?" It'll autocomplete before you finish typing. And the answers aren't new: underfunded education, limited job opportunities, crumbling infrastructure, and a poverty cycle that's been spinning for generations. Mississippi isn't just poor in dollars, it's poor in opportunity, in investment, and often in hope. While other states are moving forward, Mississippi feels stuck in a past that refuses to let go. And that wraps up the 10 poorest states in the U.S. as of 2025. Each state has its own story and struggles, but one thing's clear: it's time for serious change in education, jobs, and sustainable development. If this video gave you a new perspective, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. What do you think is the biggest reason why so many states in America are still stuck in poverty? Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.